The year was 1934. America, still reeling from the Great Depression, sought solutions, stability. The newly established Federal Housing Administration, or FHA, emerged as a beacon of hope. Its mission to make homeownership accessible, a cornerstone of the American dream. Yet this dream, built on policies of exclusion, would cast a long shadow, its promise denied to many. The FHA, with its power to insure mortgages, held the keys to countless doors. Lower down payments, longer repayment terms. Homeownership seemed within reach. But these keys often did not unlock doors for black families. A system designed to uplift became a tool of division. This is the story of how the FHA, while fostering the rise of the white middle class, simultaneously built walls of inequity that continue to cast a shadow on black communities. It is a story of promises broken, opportunities denied, and a legacy of disparity that demands acknowledgement and redress. A practice as insidious as it was widespread, redlining emerged as a cornerstone of discriminatory housing policy. Maps were drawn, neighborhoods shaded red, areas deemed hazardous for investment. These red zones, overwhelmingly black communities, were starved of capital, deemed too risky for FHA-backed loans. White families, meanwhile, flocked to newly developed suburbs, fueled by readily available FHA loans. Homes became more affordable, neighborhoods flourished, and with them, a burgeoning white middle class. The American dream, it seemed, had found its address. But this dream was built on a foundation of segregation. Black families denied access to these opportunities, found themselves trapped in neglected neighborhoods, their dreams of homeownership stifled at every turn. The FHA, intended as an instrument of progress, became a tool of division. The consequences of redlining were profound and far-reaching, shaping the racial and economic landscape of America for generations to come. It was a stark example of how institutionalized racism could permeate the very fabric of society, creating a system of advantage and disadvantage based solely on race. Redlining was not the only weapon in the FHA's arsenal of discriminatory practices. Restrictive covenants, clauses embedded in property deeds, barred the sale of homes to black families. These covenants, enforced by law, served as invisible walls, keeping neighborhoods segregated and opportunities out of reach. The impact on black communities was devastating. Denied access to FHA-backed loans and barred from desirable neighborhoods, black families faced a daunting reality. Forced into overcrowded, underserved areas, they contended with limited access to quality schools, healthcare, and job opportunities. The FHA's policies, ostensibly colorblind, were anything but. They created a self-perpetuating cycle of disadvantage, where race became the determining factor in one's ability to access the American dream. The consequences of these policies continue to reverberate today. The legacy of FHA discrimination is not confined to history books. It lives on in the stark racial wealth gap that continues to plague America. The homes denied to black families in the 20th century represent not just lost shelter, but lost generational wealth. Homeownership, long considered the cornerstone of middle-class security, became a distant dream for many black Americans. Denied the opportunity to build equity, to pass down assets to their children, they faced an uphill battle towards economic parity. The wealth gap, a direct result of discriminatory policies like redlining, continues to stifle the aspirations of black communities. It is a stark reminder of the enduring impact of past injustices and the urgent need for restorative action. Section 5. Seeds of division, harvests of discontent. The FHA's policies did more than just create a racial wealth gap. They sowed seeds of division and mistrust that continue to plague American society. The segregation enforced by redlining and restrictive covenants fostered isolation and misunderstanding between communities. White communities, shielded from the realities of racial inequality, often remained oblivious to the struggles faced by their black counterparts. The lack of interaction bred stereotypes and prejudices, further deepening the racial divide. The consequences of this segregation are still felt today. The racial tensions that erupt in cities across America are, in part, a manifestation of this historical legacy. The FHA's policies, intended to build homes, instead built walls of division, the consequences of which continue to haunt us. Section 6. Echoes of redlining in a modern landscape. While redlining and restrictive covenants are no longer legal, Their legacy continues to shape the landscape of American cities. The neighborhoods once starved of investment by FHA policies often remain underserved and underdeveloped. These communities grapple with higher rates of poverty, crime, and environmental hazards. The lack of access to quality schools, healthcare, and job opportunities perpetuates a cycle of disadvantage that transcends generations. The consequences of past discrimination are not easily erased. They are etched in the very fabric of our cities, a stark reminder of the enduring legacy of policies designed to exclude. Section 7. A legacy etched in concrete and credit scores. The impact of FHA policies extends beyond the physical boundaries of redlined neighborhoods. It is deeply intertwined with the financial well-being of Black families, manifesting in lower credit scores, limited access to capital, and a persistent wealth gap. Denied access to fair housing opportunities, Black families often faced predatory lending practices, higher interest rates, and limited access to traditional financial services. This financial exclusion, a direct consequence of historical discrimination, continues to hinder economic mobility. The legacy of redlining is not just about bricks and mortar, it is about the denial of opportunity, the perpetuation of inequality, and the systemic barriers that continue to impede the progress of Black communities. Section 8. The unfulfilled promise of fairness. The FHA, created with the noble goal of expanding homeownership, ultimately betrayed its promise of fairness and opportunity for all. Instead, it became a tool of racial exclusion, its policies reinforcing and exacerbating existing inequalities. The dream of homeownership, a cornerstone of the American ideal, remained elusive for countless Black families, denied access to the opportunities readily available to their white counterparts. This betrayal of trust has had a profound and lasting impact on American society. Acknowledging this historical wrong is not about dwelling on the past, it is about understanding the roots of present-day inequalities and acknowledging the urgent need for restorative justice. Section 9. Reclaiming the Dream, a Call for Equity. The legacy of discriminatory housing policies is a stain on the American conscience, a stark reminder of the work that remains to be done in the pursuit of racial and economic justice. It is time to confront this history, to acknowledge the harm inflicted, and to commit to building a more equitable future. This requires a multi-pronged approach, one that addresses the systemic barriers that continue to limit opportunities for Black communities. Investing in underserved neighborhoods, expanding access to affordable housing, and dismantling discriminatory lending practices are crucial steps in the right direction. Reclaiming the dream of equity requires more than just policy changes. It demands a fundamental shift in perspective, a recognition of the shared humanity that binds us all. Section 10. From Exclusion to Inclusion, a Path Forward. The road to rectifying the injustices of the past is long and arduous, but it is a journey we must undertake together. Creating a more just and equitable society requires a commitment to dismantling the structures of exclusion and replacing them with policies that foster inclusion. This means investing in affordable housing initiatives, expanding access to credit and capital for marginalized communities, and promoting fair housing practices that ensure equal opportunity for all. It is time to move beyond the legacy of division and discrimination and to embrace a future where the promise of the American dream is accessible to all, regardless of race or ethnicity. Section 11. Building a Future on the Foundation of Justice. The story of the FHA is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how even well-intentioned policies can have devastating consequences when implemented in a system rife with racial bias. It is a story that demands to be told, to be learned from, and to never be repeated. As we move forward, we must do so with a clear understanding of the past, acknowledging the harm inflicted and committing to building a future where the mistakes of history are not repeated. It is time to build a society where homeownership is not a privilege reserved for a select few, but a right accessible to all. The dream of a just and equitable America, where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, is within reach. Let us work together to make that dream a reality.